The cool thing about all of that, like you said, carbohydrates are not essential. So we start eating more fats and proteins and eat less or none of the carbohydrates. Our bodies do fat adapt. And then this magical thing starts to happen. Like I think a lot of people understand that, like, or maybe they've heard that like fasting is a really good thing for them, and they try to do fasting, but they're not able to do it because they're so hungry and hangry and moody, and their cravings are through the roof, and they just can't execute a fast. Where people that try eating this way, especially on a carnivore diet, they fast effortlessly, easily. Like it's almost an inconvenience to go eat. It's time consuming. People are just simply not hungry. They got to go about their day and do all kinds of things. So can you explain why fasting is such a great tool and why it should only really be used when you are fat adapted, especially on a carnivore diet?
So most importantly, if you want to live life with a carbohydrate consumption, you must develop insulin metabolic flexibility. That means that your body will start consuming glucose when the glucose is in presence and ketones when the glucose is not in presence. Meaning you can switch from fat adaptation to the glucose consumption. And when the glucose is gone, body is calm, goes back to the fat consumption. How do you achieve that? Well, one great way to achieve that is intermittent fasting. During the feed-in time, when you eat your meal and the meal includes some carbohydrates, your body's processing the glucose. Now that glucose is not going to last forever. It runs out at a certain degree. And then the body switches into a ketogenic state and starts burning off fat without really any problems, any hunger, and feeling that makes you upset and anxious, because when you are carbohydrate addicted, you can't really go without carbohydrates for a long period of time. You get sweaty, start getting shaky, start getting hungry, hangry. In certain degrees, you get hyperglycemia, which is the drop in the blood sugar levels. And that's very unhealthy. I mean, a healthy human should never get to a point of hyperglycemia for no reason. You're way too sugar addicted, which means your body is pretty much incapable of producing its own glucose, because why should it? You've been feeding it sugar every single time you got hungry. So the gluconeogenesis, the process that is designed to create sugar in your liver, is not even necessary for the past 15 years. Because every time you get hungry, boom, sugar. You get hungry, boom, sugar. So that's why you start feeling sick and you feel like, oh, I wouldn't be able to go without food for 8 to 10 hours. I would die. Yes, with the current state of your metabolism, you wouldn't feel great. You wouldn't die. Nobody would die, but you wouldn't feel great. Let's put it this way. But if we make you fat adapted, now you can go long periods of time, 8, 10, 20 hours. Now, currently, I'm 70 hours fasted. I have not eaten for the last 70 hours. Okay, that's a 3-day fast that I'm doing right now. I'm going to break my fast after this podcast. I work out first, which is completely fine. I work out after 70 hours of not eating. Okay, and I
Think
still
about that
perform
for the
very well.
listener. Think about that. Think about that. That's so important to say. Thank you.
Yeah, so right after this, I can still beat my previous performance. Yesterday, when I exercised, I was 48 hours fasted, and I beat my previous performance because
Yep.
my body is using up stored body fat for the fuel. And I feel amazing because the ketones are the primary source of the energy. So my muscles live off of the ketones too. I experience no performance deficiency. So I don't consume carbohydrates on daily anymore. I used to. I cut them out completely. My life quality is a lot better without the carbohydrates, and I put on a lot leaner mass. Like I eat a lot of fat, a lot of protein, and my physique is a lot tighter and better looking on protein and fat only. Every single time, especially at this fat adaptation state, if I consume a lot of carbohydrates, I get puffy and watery very quickly because that's not my preferred source of energy anymore. So my body overreacts every single time I consume carbohydrates. That's another thing to recognize, is that once when you're running strictly off of ketones and protein, you start eating some sugar. Let's say your uncle has a birthday party and you have a couple of beers with him and a couple of slices of pizza, you're going to blow up like 7 pounds from that because the body is not used to the carbohydrate consumption anymore, and the water retention will be insane. So pretty much I don't consume that on a daily basis anymore. I consume carbohydrates very rarely. But on protein and fat only, I'm performing the best I ever performed. I feel the best I ever felt, and I have metabolic flexibility, meaning that I can switch between 2 metabolisms easily. So let's say I went out for a sushi and I had a massive sushi meal. Right after the sushi meal, I can go 40 hours with no food at all and feel great.
Wow.
which means I just consume 400 or 500 grams of carbs. I can go 2 days with no food and feeling great. If I did that, if I was sugar addicted, by nighttime I would be starving,
Starving.
meaning I would have to eat more. And if I ate more that night, where I already had a massive amount of carbohydrates, protein, and fat for lunch, well, now I'm pounding calories at night again, and I'm getting fatter and fatter. That's where the problem is. Carbohydrates do make you hungry. They make you
Yeah.
hungry. They suppress the leptin sensitivity, so your brain is not getting as much signal that you're full. When you're eating steak and eggs, your leptin sensitivity is really high. As soon as your body's full, it sends the signal to your brain through the hormone called leptin that, hey, we've had enough food, shut the appetite down, we're good. So
And
appetite goes down, and all of a sudden you're just talking to the person with a piece of steak on your fork, and you're just waving around, and you don't even put it in your mouth. You just sit there.
it's
And
amazing how strong those signals are. That hormonal signal to stop eating when you are wolfing down eggs and it's delicious. And all of a sudden, like you're right. You may have one more little bite. You can't eat it. It's impossible.
you get sick of it. You don't want it. You're just talking to the other person with the half full plate. But if I tell you, hey, do you want to have some cheesecake? Yeah, sure, I'll have some. You'll have a cheesecake that suppresses the leptin sensitivity and it allows you to overeat. That's why we have a morbid obesity problem. People overeat. And that food that is really high on fat and sugar all in once is making you insulin resistant. So now when you're in an insulin resistant state, eating foods that are really high on fat and sugar and support further and further insulin resistance, which is eventually going to turn you into a diabetic, you're getting fatter and fatter. And with all that extra body fat, you're getting more pressure on your heart. You're getting more pressure on your cardiovascular system. And then you develop kidney disease, because number one reason why kidneys are getting sick in the United States is high blood pressure. It's not a protein, it's the high blood pressure. We have over 2,100 studies that have been reviewed, and there was a meta-analysis that took 30 of these studies that were the most important to review all of them to find a relationship between protein and kidneys. There was none. There was actually a study that shown people with a stage 4 kidney failure who started consuming more animal protein, getting their EGFR levels better. That means the filtration of their kidneys has improved, which means that pretty much what's killing your body is all the processed food that we have in today's society, all the sugar and the trans fats, and everything that's being represented as healthy is actually not healthy. Have you seen a recommendation for the new food pyramid?
Oh, the Tufts food compass that came out, or
Uh,
the United States recommendations.
yes, like the number one best food in the world was watermelon or some shit.
Yeah, yeah, it's
That's
absolutely
just
ridiculous, preposterous.
Cheerios was like number 3, and
Yeah,
red meat and eggs was the last one,
yep,
like to avoid.
yep.
So if you are pretty much sticking to the recommendations like this, you are going to certainly experience your health going down the drain. Certainly. And if people think, oh, I can't only eat meat and eggs, and I can't only do this type of diet. All right, let's call it you can't eat healthy. Like it's too, you don't want to diet, you don't want to be limited. Have you tried being sick? It's a lot
That's right.
harder. It's a
That's
lot
right.
harder, trust me on that one. Because when you're sick, Monday, you have a checkup with your GP. Tuesday, you got to go see your cardiologist. Thursday morning, you got to go for the blood work. Saturday, you got your CT. This is your life.